And we are recording. My guest today on Back to Normal is Scott Van Voorhis. He is a writer, I'd say a former reporter, or how'd you cut your teeth in writing?
Yeah. Well, I'm still a reporter. I just work on my own now. I launched my own newsletter 2021 and Contrarian Boston. But I had spent a whole bunch of years at local papers, including the Herald.
Okay.
Went off on my own for about a decade because I could make more money.
Real quick, let's pull that mic close to you.
Oh, yeah.
You can pull it. Yeah, there you go. Beautiful.
I figured I could make more money on my own, and newspaper business seemed to be going down the drain. And then I decided, well, I really like the stuff. I did some stuff for the Globe, freelancing, other places. I really liked, stuff I did at the Herald and the Boston Business Journal, covering politics, business. There's a void there in the market, and why not try to fill it? So that's what I've been doing.
I agree. There is a void. And so your Substack?
It's a Substack, yeah.
So your Substack is Contrarian Boston. I have subscribed. I've unsubscribed. I've periodically, I kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, that's okay.
I had on my personal podcast. This is going out for the Mass GOP, but I was talking with Megan Johnson the other day, and I mentioned this. I think the media model of what it is. I would love a model where just give me 24 hours of access for $2, $1.99, and I would do that. It's the monthly thing where I go, oh, come on, it's going to hit me. And like if, sometimes you hit a home run, and I'm like, okay, I got to read that. Yeah. And I'm willing, like the old school newsstand,
right?
I'll pick up an issue.
That's right.
So that's what I'm putting a little bug in all these people's ears. So I would love to see something like that, or it's just like low barrier to entry, where I could just do that. Because let me tell the audience this, it's a great newsletter. Contrarian Boston. I invited Scott on because I think he's a great writer. He's touching on a lot of subjects. He's diving deeper into what we're going to talk about today, which is, I'd say, development in Massachusetts and the greater Boston area, business, and housing affordability and all those types of things. So we're gonna touch on that. But I do want to plug his Substack, Contrarian Boston, because it's very good. Go subscribe if you want to get more in-depth reporting and analysis on those subjects. So, Scott, what is the biggest barrier to building right now in the state of Massachusetts?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? But if you ask people in the business, they would point out it's 10,000 different regulations and rules and, and combined with kind of a resistance to development. I mean, change is hard, right? And not everybody wants to see, whether it's housing or office building going up next door. And we have a state with which is great, lots of proud independent municipalities of long history, but that's not the same as other states, right? Or, other, South or the Midwest, it's more county jurisdictions and it's wider. And there's less son of oversight. So if you really want to gum up something, if you really you just want to stop it, I mean, there's a lot of levers people can pull. And that slows the process down. And there's this also, look, we've had a lot of growth. We're a small area. So, it's not as easy as maybe Texas, but still, there's a lot more gets done there.
I hear that, but if you drive around anywhere in the state, maybe not downtown Boston.
Right.
There's a lot of space. There's a lot of dead buildings. There's a lot
of I agree.
There's opportunity to build things. And one of the things, so you're on a political show. We will what we're going to talk about interweaves with politics.
Good.
Maura Healey came out yesterday bragging about, I don't know where the survey came from, but there was Massachusetts is the #1 place to live in the country. Okay, we're ranked #1 in healthcare, or close to the top in healthcare and education. Near the top for safety, and 44th for affordability. And I look at that and I go, okay, well, wow, we're at the top and we're still at 44th for affordability. Again, she was bragging about the survey. I don't know where it came from, But I look at that and I go, people with means and some who are just trying to develop the means are leaving the state.
Sure.
And it's because of the things you mentioned previously. So, I mean, this is going to be a free-flowing conversation here. What would... I know that there are lots of regulations. I think of the ones that make the headlines, downtown Boston, Boston being for one. And we can get into Boston specific in a second,
sure.
We will. But things like getting rid of gas stoves, right?
Sure.
In new development and new building.
Right.
Those things seem insane to me and driven by an agenda
sure.
that's impractical and nonsensical.
Sure.
Is that you are tied in more with the business community? You probably get a lot of feedback from
sure.
the folks. I've seen some of your Zoom things. What are we talking about? What else could there be that's specifically that we can point to? That we can really outline, not just generalities, and like really get into it.
I mean, that's interesting. I mean, there are a lot of there are like different communities that have gotten these pilot programs, where they're trying to ban gas hookups, and I've written about. I'm doing more on energy. I don't think it gets reported on very well. I think it's mainly in the mainstream media. It's like rah, all the wonderful solar and wind power, and it's all going to be great. Well, looking at the cost and the transition, and it seems like we have like 10,000 different, initiatives going on that don't all line up. If they all happened all at once, the grid would shut down because you couldn't accommodate it. So, and banning new gas hookups makes it more expensive to build, and it's just one other thing.
What are some of the so I'm maybe ignorant. If you don't know all the specifics, it's fine.
Sure.
But what are one or two more that that are preventing, or I should say, adding to the cost? Right, the affordability number that Healy talks about is still we're 44th. Right, so this adds to the affordability. When Michelle Wu puts in a dictate that says no more gas stoves in new construction. Okay, well, you have to have something else.
Right,
and then
all electric.
Right, all electric, so that makes it more expensive. It just sort of shifts. It's a trade-off. It's not really you're not saving the climate or anything, in my opinion. But what's another one? Maybe one or two more that we can identify that we can just go, okay, these are easy, low-hanging fruit that we can start to, move up from 44th to maybe 42.
Well, some of it's tough because it gets into boring. I mean, you say zoning and people start to fall asleep. And
well, let's make it exciting.
Yeah. But it's the whole state and also local process of reviewing the plans and having 10 different departments look at them and septic regulations or environmental regulations, just all the reviews that go into it. So it takes, if you want to build an apartment building or office building or a lab, it's going to take years. It can often take years just to get through that local approval process, especially in Boston, but also in some of the suburbs. That time is money, right? Mm-hmm. You bought a site, you have to pay it, you're taking out debt. You're not going to have any income coming in until the thing is built. So say it takes you 3-4 years to get it permitted, if you can get it permitted, and then it takes another 3 years to build it. That's a long time. And your prices are going to reflect that. You're going to charge higher rents. It's going to be more expensive. Everybody says, well, why aren't you building for the middle market? Well, but at that point, you may just be building for whatever you can. It restricts all that over time, restricts the amount. It's kind of a math game, right?
Well, do we know if that's law or regulation? Meaning, I plan to have on the gubernatorial candidates, and I'll put this out there right now for the general public. If you're a Democrat and you'd like to come on this program and talk about what you believe and you think there should be more regulation, whatever, let's come on and have that out. I've put out some feelers from some candidates. Yeah. They have, I have not heard back, but I would like to hear from them on that because I want to get into the specifics of this. You mentioned, so there's 10 different departments, but I want to get to solutions on this, right? I don't want it to be boring and complaining. But what are these departments? Are they under the executive branch where we could eliminate them? Are there rules rather than laws that we can clear the regulation when a new executive comes into power? Hopefully, in my opinion, a Republican. You're on a political podcast, sorry. Of course. But when that happens, when they wipe away these or pull back those regulations, not just not enforcing them, but actually materially changing them, is that possible, or is this legislative? Is this codified into law?
Yeah, I think the state certainly plays a role in it, and there are different things that they could be doing, either freeing up land, sitting on land that's just not being used. And there's a lot of talk about it, but it never seems to get done. There's certainly environmental regulations, but a lot of it's on the local level, and it makes it harder to get at because every town is going to have its own. There are ways to get at it. There's a ballot question that's being pushed by a researcher. He does work for the Pioneer Institute. It would reduce lot sizes. And that's one big reason we don't get smaller homes, is because you have lot sizes that are required to be an acre or 2 acres.
Yeah, I struggle with this. Just real quick, pull that mic.
Yeah,
I hear you good, but I want to make sure you're clear.
Yeah, doesn't sound faint.
Yeah. So I struggle with this, right? I read about that study, and I might have that. I forget the individual's name, the person's name. I might have Andrew. Something. Yeah, I know guys at Pioneer, so I can have them on to talk about this. But he wants to put a statewide, right? I believe it's a statewide blanket to either allow smaller lot sizes or restrict. Like, there's some language I'd want to get into there, because
it's 5,000 square feet would be, that would be the minimum or the maximum you could require. You can't say, look, every house has to be a acre.
See, I don't know how I feel about that, because I look at that and I say, what makes a nice town a nice town?
That's true.
What makes a nice town a nice town? And what makes a nice town is big lots, nicer homes. And okay, but not everybody can live in a nice town. My town where I live is, it's pretty middle class, right? But there are bigger lots, there are smaller lots. It depends. But this means opportunity for, I think the towns should compete against one another in that respect, right? We saw a glimpse of this with the MBTA Communities Act, right? And by the way, we're going to have Mike Keneally on here. We're going to have Brian Shortsleeve on here. We're going to have all the gubernatorial candidates. So we will get into that. But you saw Milton push back. They're like, they barely have MBTA infrastructure in Milton. It was that silly trolley that doesn't really operate full time. So you look at that, and I say to myself, like, why is the state crowbarring in this one-size-fits-all thing, and now the Attorney General's saying, like, no, we are doing it, and we're going to sue you, and that's it.
Yeah.
Whereas you have communities that would be like, well, we want the jobs.
Sure.
We want the building. We want the construction. I'm sure they're around. Give them the incentive to do it, much like so I don't know about this one-size-fits-all where it's, say, 5,000 square feet cap on this. It's like, who are you? Wait a minute. What makes a nice town a nice town? And those opportunities, people are mobile. People will move to that town, maybe buy that starter home where they allow the construction of it. Why it's a starter home? You mentioned the small lots, because starter homes. They're the emphasis on starter. So, I balk at state regulations that say, okay, you can't do X.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what makes it so difficult, right? Because it's in general, people will agree we need more housing, we want more choices. I mean, anybody who's ever tried to buy a house in the Boston area realizes that there's not a lot to pick from. Yeah. And you're stuck, unless you're often stuck looking at stuff that needs a lot of work or just overpriced, or it's tough.
Yeah.
So,
well, but to return to your earlier point, I think it's worth to say, I want to look into this, and when the candidates come on, I'm going to press them on this, because I think if the case is it's regulation and not law, and where a new governor can come in and ease back all those regulations, I think that's fair. I'm also I think we should do that, right? So that it goes from 10 review processes to something more reasonable, and these can be sped up.
But that's a lot on the local level. I mean, the state plays a role too, but a lot of it's local, and so that gets into a tricky issue.
Yeah.
Are you mandating stuff? No one likes that. It kind of cuts across party lines. I mean, you'll have people that say, I can, right?
Right.
I mean, you have independents that are going to not be thrilled with either. Like, you're telling me what to do. On the other hand, times change, and maybe it's an individual level where towns have to make a decision what kind of town we want to be. But you couldn't build the suburbs. I mean, you couldn't build the suburbs of the 60s and 70s today. You couldn't, because they changed the rules.
Yeah.
And some of it is towns are saying, look, I don't want it. They're looking at it like, hey, I want fewer larger homes, means more taxes, makes sense, right? Fewer kids. I don't have to worry about the school system, but you can also get in a situation where you have a graying, older population. You're restricting. You're not letting, that end of families coming in, and they're moving. Or go to New Hampshire. If I want to buy a house, I'll just go to New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. People will move, but I think that I struggle with the idea that townships. I would have to say there are 351 towns in Massachusetts.
Oh.
So all of them are locally restricting the thing. I think the towns that want the business and want the homes should compete for it, right? Or attract the new home builders. I think that was the carrot versus stick. The carrot part of the MBTA Communities Act, where they get more money to build infrastructure that makes it easier if they're near a train station, they're near a commuter rail station, something like that. Look, I'm not saying this is easy, but we can move generally in the right direction. And if there's local control that's inhibiting all of Massachusetts, I think there'll be boom towns then, because there's going to be a few towns and cities that say, no, bring it here.
Yeah,
bring it here, and then the money will flow in that direction.
Yeah, I mean it's that is true. You'll get towns competing for that. Whether you get the volume of housing that you need, I mean, the numbers are there. I mean, the volume has just dropped dramatically from the 80s. So we were building a lot more. It was less restrictive.
There's also different factors at play that I don't think people consider.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I think, so it's like, so I'm in my late 40s.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 50s, yeah.
50s, okay. So Gen Xer. Yeah, you're a Gen Xer like me.
Sure.
Our parents, the boomers, right? They got married in their early 20s. There are, hundreds of thousands, perhaps maybe a million or so people in the state that have just delayed that, right? So when you delay that, say you delay getting married until you're 29, 30, 31, sure. 32. So you're single for that whole time.
Right.
And you're renting an apartment that might otherwise you would have occupied with your spouse a generation earlier.
Right.
So you have twice the number of people competing for the same amount of due to cultural differences. So things shift, and we're Boston.
That's true.
Boston is a young city, right? We have students that stay here that get jobs here. So that has put pressure on things over time, where the same, twice or a significant chunk of people competing for the same amount of space has driven prices up. And yes, have we not built enough to stay up to date with that? Absolutely. We need to build more. But there's also things I think people like to point out, some boogeyman in the situation. And your boogeyman that you point out with all the regulations, I agree with, because we shouldn't inhibit it unrealistically. But there are factors that play that culturally, societally, that we just... Yeah, we've done things differently. So I just, because when we talk about a generation, you could have lived in a starter home in the 60s and 70s, it wasn't the same thing. You go, hold on a second. It's like we're not behaving the same way as we were in the 60s and the 70s. So there's a difference. So
market demand has changed. People are different.
Yeah,
there are more people living alone. I mean, there's a whole bunch of societal changes. So you have that, but the population of the state has gone up maybe 1 million since the 80s. I mean, it has gone up.
Yeah.
It may not be going up now, but it did go up. And we're building, let's say, half or a third of what we were building then. And when the stuff that we were building in the 80s was average. It was like we were a median state. So something's happening. And if you go to Texas, they're building more homes. South, they're building more homes. They're actually seeing prices go down. Now, that's bad news maybe for home builders, but wouldn't that be good news for consumers, right? I'd like to see prices go down.
It is good news. People are getting
great deals on rent. But it's not going to happen unless you build a lot more housing. And it doesn't have to be, you're not going to build the suburbs again because they're built, right? But there might be other creative ways. So like, I don't know, like Medfield, I go buy this thing, this little like town, like it's like single family homes, but they're kind of cute. I mean, everyone want to live there, but it's not like living in a townhouse. It's like they're single family homes. It's an alternative, right? You could do a lot you can do a lot in a lot of older communities, right? You have buildings that are just not being used, and they probably they're more likely to want the housing and the development. You know, on the other hand, what makes a town a great town? I mean, they want, parks and things like that, and, keep their housing stock. They want to have that feel, right? You can understand that. But you probably could do a little bit of both, right? Like, I don't know, like if you have an older center and you have buildings that are just not being used, why not look at something?
I mean, there are ways to do that. I think this is where the struggle of incentive or carrot versus stick. Do you want to sweeten the deal and make it easier for communities and municipalities to build, or do you want to make it harder? And I think I think there are more normal people in the state that just probably aren't paying attention and just go through the daily slog. And activists are loud and obnoxious and tell you you're destroying Mother Earth, and when you're in fact not, and just unrealistically putting all these burdens on everybody else because they don't care. I mean, they don't care about the issue. They care more about perhaps just saving the earth and doing their little part that they can feel morally superior over. If it's a municipality thing, I struggle with this. I don't know if there's a state solution to it other than to not be punitive about it, but try to get to a point where the communities that want to build, we make it super easy for them, give them incentive, tax incentives, all kinds of incentives to make that happen. And I think it can and should happen, but we have the biggest problem I see right now is that Boston is the engine of the Massachusetts economy. Sure. Full stop. And we have a mayor there who is, by the way, Josh Kraft, I've invited you on this show. I sent some emails, no reply. I'd love to have you on here to discuss this. She is making it incredibly hard to just build in the city. And I have my own suspicions on why that is, but you look at the skyline of Cambridge. Yes. It's dotted with cranes building. Yeah. You look at the skyline of Boston, barely one.
Well, I think, it's Kraft has certainly brought those issues up, and I've written a lot about it. I mean, there's been building has declined across the state over the last few years, but it's declined even more in Boston. I mean, it's been a real dramatic drop-off. And developers will say, look, you've upped the requirements for what we're, the energy requirements, but also the affordability requirements. And everybody wants affordability, but if it's 20%, that means it's not 20% that they're getting money from the government. It's 20% where you're saying you have to sell these or rent these units at below market rates and make it work.
Right. So you're talking about the affordability units, right? Somebody builds an apartment building, they need X% to be quote unquote affordable.
Right.
Right. Okay. So that's just a mandate. And for the audience, for background, what that means is if it's 5% of the units in a building, you can earmark those towards, but when it starts to creep up to, what is it now, 20?
It's 20. It went from 13 to 20.
Okay, big jump.
At the same time, interest rates went up, so borrowing costs went up. So it's more expensive for people building to borrow the money, to pencil it all out. I mean, there's no mystery there. I mean, it's whether you believe, I guess it's the mindset, political mindset. Do you believe, like the business community? Do you think they're just trying to put something over on you? And I think that's the problem they're running into. They're saying, look, this doesn't work. You've increased the regulations. It's already tough enough. That's why we're not building. I think I think from the Woo perspective, it's like, maybe you're holding out on us. You know,
Well,
you're just complaining. You just want to make a big profit.
Right. Well, this is what people like Mayor Wu and her supporters, her staff, the activists that campaign for her, just simply do not understand, because they've never worked in business. They've been in, probably NGOs and political operations their whole lives, and they don't understand what, they're just making obscene profits, like and they have no idea what percentage of that. You build a building, it costs a lot of money.
Sure.
It costs a ton of money. The labor to build it, the materials, the regulation, the lawyers, the architects, a ton of money. You make somebody say, well, only 20% of the units can have, or not only, but 20% of your units have to be affordable. You can't sell them at market value.
Right.
You look at that and you go, well, okay, I'm only making 10%, 5% on this building, like your net thing.
Right.
That wipes it out. It becomes not worth it to do the project.
Right.
Because you can't just raise the prices, then people won't buy them at all. And you're seeing that. I think there was something at the seaport. There's one of the, I forget what.
It's one the Cronin project.
Yeah. Where 40% of
St. Regis,
right. St. Regis, where they're just unoccupied. But I think this is Jeff's theory here. Okay. I don't want to get like conspiratorial in the sense that I think there is a mindset and a political philosophy and ideology that is averse to capitalism, and capitalism is tied to destroying the environment. So if you want to save the earth, you must destroy capitalism. And I think there are a lot of people around Mayor Wu who adhere to that ideology. I think it's a problem because capitalism is a force for good. It's free trade amongst individuals and amongst groups of individuals, and everybody is satisfied with the deal that they make. And preventing that from taking place, this is the thing, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. The people that build those buildings work in Boston, around Boston, the materials, like all of it, when it comes down to the lunch truck that pulls up to the construction site, after the building is built, all of that. You need to build. We need to actually construct things in this country, in this state, for there to be economic activity. And when you shut that down, people just don't wait. If their job is building, they will go somewhere else to build. And we have a real problem with that. And I think the regulations of that, or putting that. So, all right, we got to one of the things, the 20%, the 20% threshold for affordable housing. No more gas stoves. I'm sure there are other regulations, and maybe I'll have a construction executive come in here and we can get into some of the specifics, because this is a real problem. These are good middle class, blue collar jobs that are being stifled for what?
Yeah, I can't speak to the motivations of her staff.
And let me be clear. Yeah. I'm not asking you to. Yeah. I'm just putting that forward for the audience.
And I do think they're, she's a progressive, right? I even call her like uber progressive. To be it's pretty clear they're pretty skeptical about capitalism, and that plays into what development and building, and whether you think the market can have a solution for it. She's never spelled it out. My sense is that she doesn't think that it's a market solution. She never talks, Walsh believed in market solutions. He grew up through the building trades. He saw the jobs that came from that. He put out reports about the number of housing units and tracked it. She stopped all that. She won't say it, but it seems like and her emphasis is on public housing or very heavily subsidized affordable projects. The problem is those are expensive to build, and you don't get a lot of them. And so you start to have this kind of, decline in building, decline in, sure, a new luxury building, so-called luxury building, it's going to cater to a certain market, but those are people that are not going to be going, and buying something older and fixing it up if that's what you're concerned about. If you're concerned about gentrification, you should be letting people build whatever they want to build, because, triple deckers, were traditionally working class housing. They're not anymore. You know, why is that? So, I mean, the argument against building more housing, especially in a city like Boston, doesn't take into account that people are going to go somewhere. They're going to come here. They're going to live here. If they don't have the options, they're going to pick what they can pick, and you're going to get all the things that you're concerned about.
Yeah, well, I think you're seeing this, and there's this. I don't think it's a broad ideology across the board. Look at Mamdani in New York City. You know, socialist. Excuse me. I mean, openly says he's a socialist, but in fact, communist. Wants to. Again, Jeff's opinion, but there's evidence for this where he says he wants to take over the means of production thing, or those types of things where you say, and they ask, well, what kind of mayor would you model yourself after? And then they say Michelle Wu, and you're like, well, there you go. There's a, and then Elizabeth Warren tracking with that as well. This thread has taken hold where they just simply don't believe capitalism is a force for good in the world and have to stop it. And there's a moral component, because when you subjugate people to public housing and you say public housing is the answer, and I think it robs people of dignity, the dignity of owning your own property. And this goes part and parcel with all of that. There is a instinct in the progressive mind to say that, well, property doesn't really exist, right? It sort of belongs to everybody. They can take it away. We'll put you in a government-sponsored box, and you will live there forever, and you'll work this, and you'll rent from us, but we own it, and you never have anything to leave your kids. And I think that's morally repugnant, because what makes this country successful and what has made everybody successful here is work. Hard work, building your own thing, whatever that is, leaving it for your children, leaving a legacy in place. And when we have politicians and people in our government that don't adhere to that, they want to force people into the boxes that they see fit. And you will do what they say, and you will live where they live, and ride your bicycle or walk, not drive your car, basically restrict their freedom because they know best. And it really is I'll say this, morally repugnant attitude that needs to be confronted directly. My opinion, I'm not putting that on Scott here, believe me, but it needs to be said, because this is the type of stuff that affects us every day, right? This is not some one-off hypothetical example here. We're going through this right now. Buildings are not being built.
Yeah,
people are moving away.
Yeah, I would push back on that a little bit. I think you need a mix of stuff. We've had public housing for years. But I don't think it's the answer. I don't think the answer is you couldn't. It cost about $1 million in Cambridge. It cost when they built public housing recently, it's cost $1 million a unit. You'd bankrupt your city. You'd bankrupt the nation. It's not going to work. You certainly should upkeep what you have. You can maybe add a little, but that's not the solution, right? That's not the solution for or the thing to aspire to. People should be able to, rent. They should be able to, buy homes. They should be able to do all those things. I think this gets into the progressive mindset, and I don't know if it's that. I don't know how well thought out it is, but I think there's a political calculation here where you can stand up for a lot of, or say you're standing up for a lot of kind of virtue signaling things. At the same time, we want all our housing to be completely affordable and have all these dream things. Yeah. That sounds like, well, who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
And nothing gets built, but maybe that's not so bad if your constituents are like, they have their housing, they're fine, they're along with it.
Yeah.
It's not disruption in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
So we play this fantasy game of the perfect neighborhood, the perfect, we're going to have I can't speak to the Mamdani in New York. He clearly has taken things to a whole new level beyond what Michelle Wu has done in terms of, wanting, city-owned grocery stores and, just things that just sound kind of...
Right, she hasn't come out and said that
loony.
Publicly.
And she may not. She may be looking at it differently. They're different, but I think it's convenient, right? It's convenient to put all these requirements, ask for the perfect, the perfect development, and say you're standing up for stuff and ignore the fact that nothing's getting built. And maybe it doesn't matter to the people who are voting for you because they're fine.
That's a good point, because I think that is largely the case. Like I see these clips come across my social media feed of Elizabeth Warren on CNBC, right, the business channel, and she'll just repeat the same stuff. We are fighting, and these big billionaires, and we are fighting back against them. And what they're really doing is just words, and nothing gets done. So there's no, or maybe they'll raise taxes, and there's this mindset of class warfare within certainly on the left and the left of the Democratic Party, where it's like, okay, we're not even going to try to find solutions. We're just going to tell you we're going to raise taxes on billionaires, and somehow magically through that calculation, we're going to get to a point where your life is better. And I told the party that I wouldn't curse on this show, but it's BS. It's BS, because all they do is say that. All they do is say that. Michelle Wu says that. She had a rally the other day. We're fighting, and you can't bully us around, and bullying like she's a victim in this situation. It's just like, those are words, and you've got problems, and you're not solving it. I see it from Maura Healey every day. Trump, 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 Trump. Meanwhile, Massachusetts, we're falling behind in affordability. People are leaving the state for good reasons, and it's just, they think they can get away with over and over stirring up class warfare and nice sounding catchphrases.
I don't
it's bothersome.
I don't think it's working. I mean, I
don't.
I think that Trump wouldn't be president right now if if enough people were like, oh, I hate these billionaires. I mean, I think most people aspire, they want to do better. And if somebody does really well, they're okay with that. I think I don't think it's a political line of attack. It seems like it sounds tired. They got to come up with something new, and it clearly hasn't worked.
I agree, and I think it's going to the well too many times right now for a lot of folks, especially maybe Massachusetts is behind the curve in terms of our electorate. Maybe we're going to find out next year. Maybe we'll find out this year for the Boston mayoral race. I don't necessarily believe the polling that Michelle Wu is up 30 points against Josh Kraft. I don't think it's gotten started yet. We're a few days out from Labor Day.
Sure.
I think that's going to change. I think that margin will be closed. But who knows? Perhaps the city of Boston, the people who vote regularly, are just maybe don't care. They're a bit detached from the situation, and that might be the case. Speaking of, I wanted to get to one topic. So you've written about this. I tried writing about this and getting it published for over at Commonwealth Beacon, but they stopped publishing me. So it's been. We'll get into that.
Okay.
The White Stadium over in Dorchester.
Sure.
This, to me...
Franklin Park. I don't know. It's...
Okay, right. So...
I think it borders... It's complicated. No, it's Roxbury, Jamaica Plain. Maybe Dorchester, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, I think Dorchester.
It's because it's big, and there's a bunch of neighborhoods that butt against it.
Right. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, and it's been in the papers a lot if you've read about it, there is a plan to, and they've already knocked it down. They had an old, it was a decrepit football stadium used locally by the high schools for football playing, and they've knocked it down. But the plan is to build a women's soccer stadium for a professional soccer team, and that soccer team would have about 20 home games per year, or maybe 12. I looked this up. Should check my own notes, but
and there's 20 and then 20 practices. Maybe I think that's what.
Okay,
so it's 40 days.
So 40 days out of the year. Originally, this thing was supposed to cost maybe 60 or 70 million, and half of that was from private development. Now, the cost, you can tell me, Scott, what is the cost, at last estimated cost of this?
$200 million.
$200 million, of which there's no clarity that taxpayers aren't on the hook for at least 100 million of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably 100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, right? Because here you have the mayor really is, pushing this along. She's, arguably bent the regulations and to get something built in a public park, a stadium. Neighbors are not so thrilled with it. I mean, you can go back and forth whether that, but it's, but here you have all these housing plans that are just sitting there, and why wouldn't she use some of that same energy to, build something, do something different? But she clearly, this is something, it's a pet project of hers. For a time, it involved the publisher of the Globe. She bowed out. We don't know why.
We can hazard a guess is because it's a really stupid idea.
It could be that,
and it's controversial and dumb. Here,
because every time I'd read about it, I'd say, look, and she's an investor in it, and they eventually they started saying that as well.
The investors in this professional soccer team are heavy campaign contributors to Mayor Wu.
That's true.
So that's one. One of the investors is the daughter of the former owner of the Celtics. So they just cleared
hundreds of
millions of dollars.
More.
Yeah, for this, and now there's I think maybe you wrote this. There's tax implications here where they can move that money towards the development, maybe, and get some tax credits.
Yeah, they're not saying,
so,
and they have not said no, we're not going to do this, but they could. It's an opportunity zone. The park is an opportunity zone, and so you could take some of that money and you could show the capital gains from the sale of the team. It's a family. It wasn't just her father; it was a family trust.
All right, so let me explain why this is one of the dumbest ideas that has come across the desk of Mayor Wu, and she has just plowed ahead like she doesn't give a damn. Okay, my daughter plays soccer. Sure. I would go to a professional women's soccer game. Yeah. I think it's profitable. I think it's a good idea. I think Boston would have a team that makes money. I think it is a fantastic idea to bring a professional women's soccer team to the city. Full stop.
Sure.
Okay? Not at the location where they're building this stadium for two reasons. One, the Kraft family, is actually planning on wants to build one over a professional stadium over in Everett, right? And so we'd have two stadiums for professional soccer,
right? One
of which is in the smack dab middle of a neighborhood. There is no parking and traffic to drive to this stadium, which they've earmarked about 11,000 seats for this stadium.
Yes.
That's the planned version. So you'd have to get 11,000 people there, and there's no parking. You can't really drive there. Traffic would be a nightmare. The nearest T stop is a mile away.
Yes.
A mile away. So you would have to get off the orange line, walk a mile, then get to the stadium each way, right? So it would be incredibly hard to attend a game if you wanted to attend a game. Just by you got to walk a mile, then you got to walk a mile back.
Yeah.
You can't drive there really. Right off the bat, lots of red flags. Now, here's the dumb part. Here's the truly, truly stupid part. They're building this stadium to seat about 10 to 11,000 people. Do you know what the average attendance at a women's professional soccer league game was last year?
Guessing 5,000.
No, about 12,000. So they're not even building a stadium that would fit the capacity of an average game. Right. So it won't. So if they're wildly successful, it's already too small.
So they'd have to expand, and you go through another. Yeah, a much bigger facility,
right,
beyond what you already have.
It is mind-bogglingly dumb to move forward with this project when all you would have to do. This is just the political instincts, and I honestly am truly baffled by this. I'm baffled by this. Michelle Wu could have looked like a hero and say, you know what, we're gonna get together with the investors in the professional women's team, and we're gonna get to the Kraft family owns the New England Revolution, and we're gonna figure out a good place to put a stadium. People are going to get to work. There's going to be jobs building it. By the way, she's been blocking the thing in Everett, right, to get built.
Right.
So where she could look like an absolute hero. It's going to be 25,000, 30,000 seats. It'll be enough for, we'll give tax breaks to the team, but, coincide, work up the schedules, the whole deal. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
We're moving forward with this. I want to do. I'm like, I cannot, I don't know what, there's no form of sanity taking place in this. I just look at this. It's one of the dumbest proposals. And they're just going to plug forward with it. I mean, have they started construction on this?
They've demolished a lot of the stadium, but they've kept up a wall maybe as a way to say it's a renovation, because they stay without, if it's a renovation, they don't have to undergo environmental regulations. So here's a case where they don't want the environmental regulations. It's very convenient.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. She's really tried to drive this home, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, as you're pointing out, and that's a good point. I remember writing about this. It's too small. They would have to come back at some point if it, successful and add more seats. It's a bad location. How did this happen? And is it a question where, this is her social circle of people. They think it's a great idea, and she's not pushing back and saying, look, this isn't, we may be friends, but this is a bad idea. It's definitely a mess, and the cost continues to go up. She's acknowledged that it's going to go up. She won't say how much. She says it won't have the final cost estimates until after the end of the year, after the election.
Yeah. Well, that's convenient, right? After the election.
It is. Yeah. It is convenient.
I look at this and I just, the people of Dorchester are getting screwed on this, because look, you could put $20-30 million for a new facility,
right? So
that the high school kids could play all kinds of sports on there. Track and field, football, soccer, and schedule it so that the whole community can use it, build nice facilities around it, and be something that like everybody's really public use, right? Yeah. They can totally take advantage of it. But no, they're just here's where I think it really starts to get obscene, where none of the details have been worked out, because it reeks of the cronyism that everybody hates about politics. And I'll ask you
in
this.
Massachusetts politics.
Oh, politics across America, right? So, sure. Okay. So we go back to this. We say this is let's say this moves forward, right? Okay. And they build this stadium, and the taxpayers are on the hook for $150 million, maybe 130, something like that, some really ridiculous amount that they shouldn't be. It should be, if the women's professional team wants a stadium there, they should be paying for the stadium, the lion's share of it. Say this women's professional team becomes wildly successful. Sure. Or say I'm completely wrong. Right, and they build it in 12,000, and it's $100 a ticket, and everybody still goes, and they're willing to walk a mile each way, and they don't want to drive, and they don't care, and yada yada yada. So they do that. They get all the money. They get all the profits, right? So they say it becomes a very successful franchise.
Right. They do have they have lease payments, but and so they will pay.
It will take decades, to pay that back, so the taxpayers are made whole.
Right, and as you're saying, it could have been done. Andrew Zimbalist has looked at this.
Yeah,
the sports.
He did some good work on that.
He's a sports economist, retired now, but he still does work, and estimated that it would cost maybe $5 to $20 million just to do a really nice school facility.
Yeah.
What they're building now cannot be used for football, which is a whole other issue. Like you can't have they're not going to have the football team there. And that was
American football. They will not. They were. This is news to me. Okay, honestly, that's breaking news. They cannot play American football on this field.
Pretty sure, that they can't. That's not. Maybe they've made provisions since then. So I'd really want to check. But
This makes my head hurt.
And it is a story that,
this makes my head hurt.
That it's on my ticker to dig into. But it seems wrong that that you have and I don't know what's going on with the football program, that there's been stories over the years, maybe it's had its struggles, but lots of kids, last time I checked, like to play football.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, to me, that's an issue that has not gotten the attention it deserves. The thing was a disgrace. I mean, somebody should have built, the amount of money BPS spends on a school system, somebody should have fixed this place years ago. And why she didn't come along and just say, look, we're going to do what we need to do. I mean, they don't have all the money in the world, but they spend like it is anyway. So, I mean, they might as well, they should have just fixed it up and fixed it up for the kids.
For the kids.
And let it go with that and find another site. The Crafts looked for years in Boston, couldn't find anything. She would have been like hero if she could have found something. And also, what a way to disarm your opponent. I mean, as opposed to,
exactly. Right? You would not have an opponent. You'd be cruising to re-election if this was the case.
Yeah. It's but there's an oppositional thing here where we want to set ourselves up as, she wants to set ourselves up as, set him up as this, he's, part of the billionaire class that she's railing at. He's a Democrat. He says he is. He keeps on he has to take ads out to show he is. I mean, it's kind of
probably
funny.
Why he won't come on this show.
Right. Yeah. No, it would compound his issues, right? Because he's trying to, she's basically.
I would be very.
He's on the defensive. She set the terms, which is your father supported Trump at one point.
Yeah. And
so therefore you are, I mean, it's. I guess it's politics, right? I mean,
it's appealing to a base that I think is far too vocal and not as powerful as other people think. And maybe, here's the thing. I think, there's hesitation. Here's what I would explain to the Kraft team. She's going to try and paint him as somebody who is a Trumper, even though he's probably a liberal Democrat, right?
Sure.
Functionally. But to get your message out there, you do have to have like a contrarian to your opinion,
right,
about what she's doing. And it's sort of to play to her base. She set up a good scenario for her base, not for the city, not for regular voters,
right,
where it's like, okay, well, essentially straw man. I'm for goodness, and if you're against me, you're for badness. So if you're for badness, you must be a Trumper. It's like, really dumbed down, simplistic politics in that sense. And I think it will work for her base. I don't think it works for normal people that are just trying to, live their life in the city.
Yeah. I mean, will they vote? I mean, that's the issue with municipal elections. You get a small section of the population that actually votes. I mean, you can say what you want about her, her politics. Trump has been a godsend for her because she would be struggling right now, potentially. She's been able to use that kind of friction, clash.
I think you've touched on it earlier, though. Maura Healey, Mayor Wu are going to the well too many times. It's like you contrast that, it's not that long ago, where Charlie Baker did not mention in his first term Barack Obama. He didn't mention Donald Trump in Trump's first term. He didn't, the 2 years of Biden, he didn't mention Biden. Like, he stayed away from it, and he's wildly popular, left with approval ratings over 70%, right? Because the state was just like, okay, he did a good job running it. And when the elections start to heat up, I think if you call to light, it's like, okay, you can blame Trump all you want, but why is mass and cast the way it is, right? Why is nothing getting built comparatively in Boston? Why is nothing getting built comparatively across the state? Why are people leaving it? And it's like, there's responsibilities, no accountability. And you're seeing this lack of accountability with Maura Healey and Mayor Wu. In my opinion, maybe not Scott's opinion, but it is a problem. And it's something that, like, I love it here. I love Massachusetts.
Sure.
Boston, I lived in Boston for many, many years. It's the best city in the world. It's my favorite city, and it's probably the favorite city of everybody who's listening to this show.
Sure.
And we want it to be successful. I remember living in the city with Mayor Menino and Marty Walsh,
sure.
and it was a great place. There wasn't homeless people everywhere. There wasn't addicts stumbling across the street. It doesn't have to be this way. These are choices we're making.
Well, it's blue cities, right? It's Boston. They're all going through the same, experiencing the same issues, and it's hard. And the overrun with homelessness, or much more than some of their other cities. Drug issues, and some of it, not building any housing. And it's there are these beliefs that seem to get into the way of getting things done. He's probably not your favorite, but Ezra Klein, he's sort of taken that lane and said, look,
right.
You're being held up by, you're not looking at the end of the day, people, what matters is what gets done. If you're not building housing, you're not, your people are not getting into whatever recovery program they need. How you get them there is a big issue, but it's not working right now, right?
Yeah.
And these are livable, and it's a terrible advertisement for Democrats, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard, like somebody like Gavin Newsom, really hard for him to run when he has a state that has issues like that, and it's seen as, whether it's fair or not, it's seen as places that are, for whatever reason, because they're tied up in knots over ideology and can't effectively deal with these issues, are seen as as places that are seeing their quality of living going down. That's a problem,
Well, Gavin Newsom, Ezra Klein I'll touch on in a second, but Gavin Newsom has had to invent new language called, things like murder states, like a new metric we haven't heard before. Like top 10, 8 of the top 10 murder states in the country are red. It's like, okay, where are these murders taking place? Oh, in the cities that are run by Democrats. And it's just like, he doesn't understand that his political instincts. Save that for another show. Go on my personal Twitter page. You'll get my opinion on Gavin Newsom. So new metrics and new language to wash over the failures in these blue cities. Ezra Klein is an interesting case because he's warming over what conservative Republicans have been saying for a long time, right? Okay, so it's this newfound abundance mindset that I hesitate to say I hesitate to admire it for its sincerity, because I think when push comes to shove, they'd cave to the left each and every time. Look, the idea that, you should reduce regulations. I think what he did that show with Jon Stewart, right? He went on with Jon Stewart and talked about how there was all these ridiculous regulations on all these municipalities preventing building, and you go, okay, are you going to vote for a Republican? And all of a sudden they balk at it. Like this is the thing. I don't know that there is some sign of it. John Fetterman, Josh Shapiro, so 2 Pennsylvania examples where I see some sanity still in the Democratic Party. There are people around here, but they're very quiet because they don't want to deal with the headaches of the left. It is not. There is more and more gravity towards the left side of the Democratic Party than there is a movement to move it back to third way or Clinton era Democrat.
He's definitely hit a chord, and I know it's easy to kind of make fun of isn't the Chamber of Commerce been saying these things for years? Are business people, now you finally figured out that that government can also gum things up with red tape and so forth. But he seems to be saying things that maybe it's a statement about where things are in our politics are, where I think both sides, there's a polarization and you get the extremes, that he's saying things that are clearly ruffling feathers because
they're more conservative arguments. They're more capital C conservative arguments.
Yeah, and I know, and then he has to talk about his own work. I mean, there's some things that, like I think I would say, I read the book. I think it's interesting, but it's much too, at the end of the day, we're a free market economy. You're going to have to find a way of harnessing that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a Clinton thing. That's also used to be a conservative Republican thing.
Yeah. There's issues with my party in that, in the populist, our big government, but big government for us, nationalist type act, which I'm opposed to. But here's where I see it. I don't see elected Democrats, like getting involved in this fight and calling off the left wing of their party. I'm a guy that will be like, well, if you think, well, we just want welfare. If you're on the right, and you like want welfare, but you just want welfare for our side, and like no illegal immigrants get welfare, but citizens can have welfare, and we want a big welfare state, and we want the government to pay for this and the government to pay for that. And we're like, no. I'm going to call that out, right? I'm going to call that to the carpet for whether it's Tucker Carlson or whomever on the right. Like those are wrong opinions because they don't work. And to bring it full circle, I think they rob people of dignity. People need to work. People need to feel like they're valued, and you feel that through what you do every day. And when I like working, and people when they accomplish a hard day's work, rather than just if they are playing video games and smoking weed and collecting a check, I'm opposed to universal basic income because it takes that away from people. We're still human beings and animals, and whether 50,000 or 20,000 years ago we were hunting the buffalo or or we had to bring the cavemen, the mastodons, right? We had to bring them home. We had to do it. It's in our DNA over thousands of years that we need to produce and do things. And there's a relatively new phenomenon within the last 150 years. It's just like, oh, okay, well, you can deserve to just do nothing and have somebody else pay for your stuff. No. So that just needs to be rejected on both sides, but we can't even deny that it's not more dramatically in favor on the left.
Yeah, I mean, there are different perspectives, right? I think it's interesting what you're saying. I mean, it's the populist. I mean, I was thinking about this coming over. I mean, there's in some ways the progressives are, on the more, uber progressives they're doing their own form of populism. So it's like you get these competing versions of populism. But I think it's one of the issues that makes it maybe more challenging is just the cost of everything has gone up. And how do you get to those solutions? And there's no strict ideologically pure solution to any of these issues.
No, I have to hard disagree. And I'm not to just be, I think there's straightforward one, right? Okay. And your economists, your Milton Friedmans, your traditionally conservative economists had it right. It's still right. The government is spending way too much money, our federal government, our state government. And when they are and they do that in two forms, it takes place in two forms, which is higher taxes to fund that. So that capital is removed from the market and is not moving around the market for economic growth and is now consumed by the government and wasted, at least minimum 30% of it disappears into bureaucracy and government employees. So the government is spending too much money, and now because the federal government is spending too much money, we are massively in debt. We are now having to service that debt even more and more. Our deficits keep growing, which is why I had my problems with the big, beautiful bill. It still adds to the deficit. It increases. We need to get down to where our government spending is reduced to what it needs to be through massive reform. And then we are printing money to fund that debt. And then we have the inflationary aspects that took place in the Biden administration. Maybe Trump's pulling back on that somewhat, but still, in my opinion, is not enough. You need, for the economic engine to take place, you need government to consume less. And it's consuming too much capital in the market. And you reduce that, and you will have that. You have a stable dollar, right? I won't even say a deflationary dollar, but you have a stable dollar that's not inflating. People put their money in the bank. It actually means something. Economic principles that work. They do work, okay? But this is one where I say it is bipartisan. There's a bipartisan ownership of this. Democrats will just put the pedal to the metal and spend, debt. Republicans will say, we should stop doing this, get into office and do nothing.
Well, somehow it's kept, somehow the deficit has kept growing.
Yeah.
We've had both parties in charge at different points. Nothing has really changed. It just keeps going, keeps galloping. It's an issue. I think, but each of these issues like housing, healthcare, I just look at my insurance bill, the cost of going to college, all these things have just skyrocketed. And I don't know if there's, and it's probably too, it's a naive approach. But each of these things probably requires a different, I don't know what they require, but they're not working. And there's got to be a different way and try different things out. Yeah. But at the moment, it's unsustainable. Right? You can't have health insurance payments that are more than a mortgage and keep going up. Yeah. Home prices that are just going insane. Food prices have leveled off, but they're still 20% more.
There's still a lot more, yep.
Some people feel it. A lot of people feel it. Some people don't. But I think it's the kind of crisis that no one is really kind of getting at. It just costs too much across the board. Government spending is one part of it, but there's all sorts of rules and regulations and the way these systems are set up that are driving the costs as well. Healthcare doesn't make any sense. Just do more operations. Maybe you don't. You're going to make more money. Well, you may not need to be doing it on a 90-year-old. So I mean,
right. Well,
how do you get? I have no idea.
There are ways, but we're right now we're out of time because we've gone over an hour. Yeah. It's been great. It's been great talking to you, Scott, and I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
You brought up some really good things that I'd like to have you back on in future episodes. We can get into that. But you've done some great work. I'll plug one more time. His Substack is the Contrarian Boston. I've been throughout the episode. I've been putting your socials up on the screen. I follow him on X. Does great work. Really good writer. Really good, staying on top of issues that the Globe and the Herald have not really covered, in my opinion, to satisfaction, and especially around housing and building and development. And I think it's something. It's one of the number one issues people talk about when they live in Massachusetts is affordability. And per Maura Healey's own survey that she touted, we are 44th in that, which is not a good metric. We want to clean up. We want people to afford to live here and not leave. So with that, I'll end this episode of Back to Normal. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Definitely want to say, we will be staying on this issue. I'll be having candidates on to discuss this in more detail. And maybe we can get some movement and gravity in the other direction, or get people back to work and get back to building. So for now, I will end this until next time. But Scott, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. Have a great.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.